besties were diving into something that is absolutely wild: Teresa Giudice's criminal charges and the whole IRS drama that unfolded around her. You may know Teresa from the Real Housewives of New Jersey, where she's always been a larger-than-life personality. But behind the glitz and glam, her financial missteps led to serious legal trouble, and the story is just as crazy as you'd imagine.
Hold yourself accountable to what you did.
Of course I do. I signed papers without reading them that I understand fully before signing any other papers in the future.
I'm sure we all know that Teresa's life has been far from perfect, but let me tell you, what went down with her legal issues is next level. It all started with a shocking revelation. Teresa's financial activities caught the attention of the IRS after something she did on television. And it's not like she was doing anything criminal on the show, at least, not at first. But let me explain. Teresa was seen spending $120,000 in cash on furniture during an episode of The Real Housewives of New Jersey. That's a huge red flag, right? Who spends that much cash on furniture? Well, apparently the IRS agent who was watching the episode noticed this and thought, this doesn't add up. So, what happened next? The IRS started looking into Teresa's financials and, oh boy, did they uncover some major issues. According to Jonathan Larson, the director of IRS Field Operations, the investigation uncovered some serious lies. Teresa was found to have submitted fabricated pay stubs for a non-existent job, claiming she was earning $15,000 a month as a realtor. The only problem? She wasn't a realtor and she wasn't making that kind of money. On top of that, Teresa and her then-husband Joe hadn't filed tax returns for 8 years. That's from 2000 to 2008. Not only had they failed to file, but they were also underreporting their income. And if that wasn't enough, they were even caught up in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy filing after the first season of The Real Housewives of New Jersey, where they hid a ton of income that they should have disclosed. Honestly, how does this even happen? How do you get to the point where you're just not paying your taxes for years? Well, I think it's safe to say that all this shady behavior didn't go unnoticed. In 2014, Teresa and Joe pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, and the consequences were serious. Teresa ended up serving 15 months in prison, and Joe served 41 months. That's a lot of time, and it's hard to imagine how difficult it must have been for them to go through that. But what blows my mind is how they got there in the first place. Let's break this down a bit. Teresa had been living a life full of luxury. She was buying expensive clothes, going on lavish vacations, posting all these pictures of her fabulous life. But meanwhile, she was just pretending everything was fine with her finances. I get it. When you're living on camera and people are watching your every move, you might want to keep up appearances. But at what cost? For Teresa and Joe, the cost was jail time, major public backlash, and the collapse of their financial world. The IRS wasn't playing around, and they took Teresa's financial situation very seriously. Now, you might be wondering, did Teresa learn from this? Well, she came out of prison, and almost immediately she started living her life the same way. She was back on The Real Housewives doing her thing, making money, traveling the world, and honestly, it didn't seem like the financial troubles ever really followed her. She eventually got a divorce from Joe and started a new chapter in her life. But it does make you think, how much did she really learn from all that drama? How do you go from serving time in prison for financial fraud to just picking up your life and moving on like nothing ever happened? One of the most interesting things about this whole situation is that Teresa still has such a strong fan base. People love her, they support her, she has millions of followers on social media, and she's still making money, still living her best life. Is that because people feel sorry for her, or because they're just here for the drama? I'm not sure. I think there's something about her that people love to watch. Even when she makes mistakes, she owns it, and people appreciate that kind of authenticity. But then again, let's be real. It's hard to feel bad for someone who is still out here buying designer bags and going on extravagant trips after getting out of jail. It almost feels like she's been able to brush it all off. And that's what makes it so tricky to really take sides on this. Is she a victim of her circumstances, or is she just another rich person who can get away with anything because they have money and fame? I think it's a little of both, honestly. On one hand, she's a real person who made some big mistakes, but on the other hand, she's a public figure, and people are constantly watching and judging her. One of the most baffling things to me about all of this is how Teresa seemed to just move on without fully addressing the magnitude of her actions. She served her time, yes. But it's like the whole thing just became a storyline on the show. People talk about it, they speculate about it, but it never seems to really stick with her. I mean, shouldn't this be a moment of self-reflection where she steps back and says, "I've learned my lesson and I'm going to be a better person moving forward"? But instead, it seems like she just kept doing what she always did, flaunting her wealth, posting about her fancy lifestyle, and continuing to be the Teresa that everyone loves to watch. It makes you wonder, if this could happen to someone like Teresa, someone with all the resources in the world, what's happening behind the scenes with regular people? The reality is, fraud and tax evasion are major issues that affect people all over the world, not just celebrities. But Teresa's story is so public, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Now to the real trouble for the two stars of the Real Housewives of New Jersey. In federal court today, facing mortgage fraud and other charges. They are known for fierce battles and legal woes, and now could be facing their biggest battle of all.
We get to see how someone with everything to lose can make such a huge mistake and still come out on top. She's a walking example of how money, fame, and even a little bit of luck can help you bounce back from even the worst situations. So, where does that leave us? Do we forgive Teresa for her past? Do we accept that she's made mistakes and learn from them? Or do we criticize her for continuing to live her life the same way, as though nothing ever happened? I think it's up to each person to decide what they believe. For me, I think it's important to acknowledge that everyone makes mistakes, but at the same time, it's also important to hold people accountable for their actions, especially when they've hurt others. Teresa's story is a complicated one, and it leaves a lot of questions unanswered. At the end of the day, Teresa Giudice's criminal charges and the whole IRS drama were a major turning point in her life. She went from a reality TV star with a picture-perfect life to someone who had to face the consequences of her actions. But did she really learn from it? I guess we'll never know. All we can do is watch and see if her past continues to haunt her, or if she truly changes for the better. So, what do you think, everyone? Is Teresa guilty of not learning from her mistakes, or do you think she's done enough to make up for it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this whole situation. Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell so you never miss out on the latest updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.